Hello YouTube, welcome back to my channel. My name is McPato and this is McPato PC. For those of you that follow the channel, you know that I moved recently from Yellowknife to Ottawa and we're here, so we made it safe. The drive took 62 hours and we covered over 5,100 kilometers, or right around 3,200 miles. So that was quite a journey, but we're here and we're happy to be here. Currently staying with family, so this is what the studio is going to look like until we get a rental somewhere while we wait for a more permanent home to be built. But anyway, today's video is going to be all about my new video card purchase, which is this here, the Sapphire Radeon RX Vega 64. Featuring 8 gigabytes of HBM2 memory, and this particular card, being a reference card, does have the Samsung HBM2 as opposed to the Hynix HBM2, and all that means basically is that it can clock usually faster. So typically, from what I've been reading, the Hynix memory goes to about 1,000 megahertz. And the Samsung I've seen go over 1100 megahertz. So, you know, 100 megahertz difference, potentially 125, 150, depending on the card that you get. But anyway, this video is going to be an overview of the Radeon RX Vega 64, and I'm also going to give you some of the reasons why I bought this and sold my GTX 1080. So we'll start with the overview of the card, a little bit of video footage of that, and I'll just point out a few of the features that have stood out to me. And then we'll get into my 5 or 6 reasons why I decided to change it up and get the Vega over the GTX 1080. Alright, so here it is, the Sapphire Radeon RX Vega 64 reference card that I bought. It was actually a used card on eBay. While I can't be sure, I don't think it was used in a mining operation. It certainly wasn't described as having been. Basically sold my GTX 1080 Strix and bought this card. It was a slight bit more expensive, but overall so far I'm very happy with the purchase. So just to go over it briefly with you guys, you've got on the I/O side here 3 display ports and 1 HDMI. As you know, it's the blower style cooler. One thing that struck me about this is that the shroud is actually metallic, not plastic, as you can probably hear there. So the whole thing is metal, including the backplate is also metallic. So very good quality, and I was surprised by how heavy the card is as a result. So it's pretty substantial to hold. Impressive, really. And you know, a lot of people hate on the blower style coolers, but aside from the noise that I will admit it does produce, anything over 50% fan is quite loud. It is nonetheless pretty effective, and at stock settings, without touching anything, playing Sniper Elite 4 maxed out settings on 1440p, I was getting temperatures in the mid to high 70s. I can't remember the clock speed, but somewhere in the 1500s. I applied a small undervolt, however, to the card and to the memory, and that lowered my temperatures to high 60s. So, you know, 50% fan, 65 to 68 degrees so far has been possible with the undervolt. And since then, I've actually overclocked it a little bit with the undervolt, and I'm getting temperatures at 71, 72 consistently with clock speeds of right around 1640 to 1660 megahertz. And my HBM is at 1050 megahertz. So pretty respectable temperatures given the performance. As you know or may not know, this card comes with Samsung memory as HBM 2. Some of the newer cards have Hynix memory, which doesn't clock as high. So my whole goal with buying this card was to overclock it with a custom water cooling solution. So that's why I went ahead and bought a reference card. You can't find them, at least not here in Canada, new anywhere that I've been able to find for a decent price. So I got a used one from a guy who actually bought a Vega 56 Nitro Plus card. Since then, he's actually contacted me and mentioned that he misses his 64 and that the 56 does not perform as well, obviously, being a 56. So far, I've been really impressed with the card. It is pretty good. I think I've got actually a pretty good one as far as the silicon lottery goes, and I should be able to clock this thing easily over 1750. I actually had it on air at over 1700 doing a heaven benchmark. You know, it was running hot, very hot, and consuming a lot of electricity, but nonetheless, it did get there. So I think with some undervolting and water cooling, I should be able to get 1700 pretty consistently, as well as 1100 or more on the memory. This part here lights up, the Radeon on the top, it's, LEDs. Inside lights up red. That's actually a nice touch, and it does look really good in the case. Up here you've got your BIOS. It's a dual BIOS, so your switch there for switching between BIOSes. And then each BIOS has 3 modes you can select from in the Radeon software. Sort of a mode for energy efficiency. You've got a balanced mode and then a turbo. And there's also a the custom option obviously as well. So that's a nice feature. On the back of the card, we've got here either the option to go red or blue for your GPU tack, and that's up here. And what that is little lights that light up based on the amount of I believe electricity your card is consuming. So the meter will kind of go up to show the consumption. And that's pretty much, that'll conclude the tour of the card. Again, this is a metallic backplate, which is nice, feels good, and looks pretty sharp. So that's my impressions so far with the physical card itself. And now I'll get into some of the reasons why I got rid of my GTX 1080 and purchased the Vega 64. All right, welcome back. Hope you guys enjoyed the overview of the card. Now we're going to get into the reasons why I changed video cards from the Nvidia GTX 1080 to the Radeon RX Vega 64. So the first reason, and I'll try to keep this part of the video a little bit to the point. I can go off pretty far sometimes, but this time I'll try to stick to the facts. Okay, guys? So basically, one of the reasons I got it, probably the number one reason, is that I'm fascinated by the technology that's built into the Vega cards. I've been following it since the first announcement of Vega, you know, delay after delay, and I still really was hoping that AMD would come out with something that would really compete with Nvidia, and something that would offer a good value for those of us with FreeSync monitors, something capable of pushing those 1440p, maybe even 4K displays. And as things developed, news came out, we learned some of the features that AMD put into Vega, some of which are still not really being utilized now. Games like Far Cry 5 that have just come out, as well as Wolfenstein 2, the new Colossus, and I believe Sniper Elite 4, There's a couple of titles there sponsored by AMD that have come out, and they do take advantage of some of the features. Some are not yet fully utilized or even at all utilized, but examples of some of the stuff that I was really looking forward to testing and getting out of Vega that was not on the GTX 1080 includes things like the rapid packed math, HBM2 memory, high bandwidth cache controller, or the HBCC. And for those of you that don't know what that is, basically it will allow people to use a part of your system memory, your RAM, as video memory should you run out of, if the 8 gigabytes are not sufficient, you're going to be able to use your system memory in the future to make up the difference. So if you've got 32 gigabytes of RAM like I do and you're playing a game, you could allocate 10 gigabytes for video memory, and it will use that instead of slowing down the system or not being able to run the game at all. You'll be able to use your system RAM. So that's kind of a neat feature. It looks like games, I guess, are not designed to use that feature very much, and so most of the time you get a very small performance increase when using it, if any increase at all right now. But as we move forward, I think probably we're going to see the new Nvidia cards coming out with 16 gigabytes, definitely 12, and probably 16 as a standard in their 1170, 1180 lineup. And probably you're going to see 8 gigabytes as the standard on the sort of 1160 series cards. So this having the 8, it's definitely enough for 1440, even 4K. But moving forward, it's possible that you'll need more memory. Instead of replacing your card, you'll be able to just use the HBCC if you have a Vega card. At least that's the idea, and that would save you some money on an upgrade in the future. So that's sort of a neat feature there. The number 2 reason that I changed my video card is sort of this fine wine term that is applied to AMD graphics cards. So typically AMD is considered to appreciate over time in terms of performance. Much like a fine wine gets better with time. So what that means usually is that the driver support is there. You're getting implementation from game designers, and as the card gets older, it actually, not the physical card getting older, but that technology ages and matures, you end up getting better performance later on than you do when it first comes out. And I think, I don't know if I'd call it the fine wine effect necessarily, but certainly you can see with the new titles, Far Cry 5, they have released updates, driver updates that have added, I can't remember exactly, but let's say between 5 and 15%, something like that. Joker Productions made a video on the increase recently, so if you guys want to see the exact numbers there, he's got a video on there on his channel. But yeah, I think it's about 5 to 15% increase just with the one driver update, and that's compared to launch or soon after launch. So with time, let's say you've got, let's just call it The Witcher 3, the card comes out, the technology is new, and you're getting, maybe we'll say 80 frames per second, and by the time 2 or 3 years go by, you might be able to get 90, 95, 100 frames per second with the same video card. Certainly you'll get that same or similar effect with the Nvidia card, but it's sort of understood or believed that AMD cards do mature and get a little bit better over time as compared to Nvidia. So that was my number 2 reason. I'm going to be building a new computer. It's going to be water cooled, which means custom water block, possibly hardline tubing, and I wanted something that I could keep in my system for the duration. I will be doing 1440p gaming for at least the next 2 years. If I change anything, it would be going to an ultra wide 3440 by 1440, but not a full out 4K display per se. So there's that possibility there potentially. I have to look at the performance sort of impact and make sure that I can push the kind of frames that I want to push. But otherwise 1440 is my resolution of choice for the next couple years for sure. And with a FreeSync panel, that is a good matchup for sure. My FreeSync range right now, my monitor is 35 to 90 hertz, I believe. I'll be doing a video on overclocking your monitor, the FreeSync range, so stay tuned for that. If you guys aren't subscribed, consider subscribing. I do plan to bring quite a few videos relating to Vega to my channel in the next over the next 8 months or so. I think I'll have my custom loop set up by the end of the 8 months, and that'll open up a lot of test potential for me in terms of overclocking, undervolting, and changing out the BIOS on the card itself to the liquid cooled BIOS. So I've got a lot of things planned. If you guys are interested in that, definitely consider subscribing and hit the notification option so that you guys are notified when I put up new videos relating to Vega. Alright, moving on to number 3. I enjoy playing with the technology, and it sort of ties in with what I just said, but essentially Vega is new. Vega has a lot of cool features, and I think a lot of unexplored potential or unrealized potential. As games come out and take advantage of all the technology that it has to offer, I think it'd be really neat to be able to play around with that, to make videos about that, and share those videos with you guys. You know, there's 1,000 GTX 1080 videos for every Vega video, which probably makes sense because most people probably aren't playing video games on a Vega. They're probably mining or whatever. But there's a lot of people that do want Vega cards to game on, and I'm one of them. So basically I just want to be able to make cool videos for you guys about Vega. I would like to explore its potential and all of its features. They're new, you know, and AMD software is really getting better with time as well. The Adrenaline driver is great. The Relive driver from last year is really cool. Brought a lot of features like screen capturing, streaming, all that stuff. And now you've got the on-screen overlay built into Adrenaline, which is really handy when benchmarking or gaming. So basically that's number 3. A lot of cool features that I want to be able to explore myself and share with you guys. Number 4, and this is going to be probably the controversial one for some people, and I'm not going to say that I know what's going on with Nvidia and the GeForce Partner Program or the GPP, and I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I did own a GTX 1080. I loved the card. I thought it was great. It was very good for what it was. So I'm not saying Nvidia is bad in terms of performance. I'm not saying Nvidia is doing what they're alleged to be doing with the GeForce Partner Program, but it does bring up a point, and that point is that I want to be able to support competition and innovation in the computer gaming marketplace. If what is being alleged is true, you've got a company that has at least 70% of the video game GPU market, and they're trying, at least it would seem, to gain an advantage to get more market share and really make the competition look unattractive and unappealing to gamers, and that doesn't seem fair. You know, there's a lot of people have said that Vega is a failure, Vega is too late, Vega this, Vega that. I think it's important to note that Nvidia sells, according to Nvidia, 10 times more graphics cards than AMD. AMD makes CPUs and GPUs, and while it took them more time, they have a much smaller team, much smaller research and development funding, and really less profits. And the fact that they've been able to come out with Ryzen, which has really changed the CPU market, and at the same time develop Polaris, which competes toe to toe with Nvidia at that mainstream, mid-level performance. The 580, 570 competes excellent with the 1060. The 1050 Ti and the 560 or whatever, they're all pretty close. And really the 580, I think, at this point in time, if you want to talk about the fine wine feature of AMD, I'd say the 580's really come out and stands on its own against the 1060. Much improved from launch. So, you can say what you want. Vega 64 does not compete with the 1080 Ti. It does not. But it does compete, and it does beat the GTX 1080 in a lot of the stuff that I've tested so far. And that's an aftermarket 1080 from Asus, the Strix card. So really, I think Vega has a ton of potential. It does really, really well. Granted, it consumes more electricity and it costs more, but that could probably be tied back to AMD's choice of HBM2 versus GDDR5X or GDDR6 or whatever. But yeah, I think AMD's done great with what they have. I wanted to support that sort of innovation. Once these features come in that I've mentioned earlier, Rapid Pack Math, HBCC, the primitive shaders, all that stuff, I think Vega is going to really, you're probably going to see, I don't know. I'm not done my benchmarking and testing, but minimum 10% over a 1080 GTX 1080, in about 5 to 6 months time with some of the new games. So it's not a failure in my opinion. It's not a failure. If anything, it came out really late, and that's kind of too bad. They missed an opportunity there. But for myself, at 1440p gaming with a FreeSync monitor, and wanting to build a custom water loop, and wanting a card that's going to perform the way that I want for the next 2 years at least, Vega is the card for me, and I don't have any problem saying that or supporting AMD on this one. In my opinion, what they've done is nothing short of inspiring, and I'll put it out there. I do have sort of a soft spot for AMD. My first system was an AMD based system, and since then I've really sort of appreciated the value side of AMD. But now it's more than that. I understand that they bring innovation, they bring competition, and I want to support that. So that's my number 4. Number 5, it's kind of been mentioned already, but effectively I want to build a Ryzen system using probably the Ryzen 2700X in my next system. And I thought it'd be cool to do an all AMD build, so I'll have that CPU, I'll have the Vega GPU, I have a FreeSync monitor, and so I'm gonna go red on my next build. So this would be my number 5 reason, just for cohesion, for kind of a cool build. It's nice to know I've got the top of the line AMD graphics card right now, and I'll have potentially, we're not sure yet if they're going to come out with a 2800X, but the top of the line, you know, Ryzen 7 CPU with the 2700X. I'll be able to overclock them both. I'll be able to hopefully, you know, get some great scores in some benchmarks. Maybe get in the top whatever, you know, top 100 or whatever scores for Firestrike or superposition or what have you. So that's the 5 best reasons I can come up with why I bought the Vega. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask me. I'll try to answer any questions that I can in terms of what I've come across so far. I'm working on benchmarking right now, and that should be up in the next couple weeks for sure. Quite a few videos I have planned will be coming out shortly in terms of benchmarking, performance, undervolting. I got one, like I said, about overclocking your FreeSync range on your monitor, or at least my monitor. It depends monitor by monitor, but a lot of content. So if you guys are interested in that, consider subscribing. If you like this video, hit the like button. And of course, as always, guys, thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting me. And I'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.